My name is Lois, and I've lived in Syracuse for 60 years, more than 60 probably. I grew up in Camden, New Jersey, and went to the University of Pennsylvania, and then met my husband there, and he was from Syracuse, so we ended up in Syracuse, New York, and it's been a great experience. I went to the doctor for just a regular gynecologic exam, and he said, I feel a lump. Did you ever feel this lump? I mean, 35, you don't really think about that. And he sent me to a surgeon. And in those days, what you had to do, you had to go in the hospital to have the biopsy. If they found that it was cancer, they took your breast off. So you could kind of wake up, okay, was it or wasn't it, and not have a breast, which is exactly what happened. And in my case, the following week, they did a biopsy on the second breast because the kind of cancer I had, which is lobular carcinoma, often appears in the other breast. So I could have ended up without both breasts, but that breast was okay. A few weeks later, a friend of ours was in the radiology department at Upstate, and he suggested to the surgeon, because of the kind of cancer I had, that they do radiation. And so that was all set up, and that kind of threw me over up until then I was okay, but the idea of 6 weeks going for this radiation, and they put little X's on your breasts, and but I came through it fine, and it was just time consuming. That's the history of my breast cancer, but as I said, I was 35 years old. 50 years ago, they were just beginning to really do chemo. So I didn't have chemo. I didn't really even think about any kind of an implant or anything till 10 years later. I went to New York. This physician was doing implants and was quite well known. So I had an implant put in. And then eventually, like 10 years after that, or maybe even more, the skin got so tight, and they were worried. By that time I had switched surgeons. My surgeon was worried that it was going to break through. So she suggested, somebody new in town, was just a plastic surgeon, was doing a very involved operation where they bring your part of your stomach up and they build a breast. And I did have that done. But that was also very complicated because it didn't take very well. He didn't realize how little blood supply there was from the original mastectomy. So they had to go in a second time, and but it's lasted. Still there. I became a more assertive person. I felt strong, stronger, and able to deal with situations. And in some ways, I think my husband and I even became closer because he had been so supportive, and he saw the changes in me, and he was able to deal with them very well. I know that doesn't happen to everybody. So yeah, it was, in some ways, it was a life-changing experience, for sure. Breast cancer has a lot to do with my career path because I actually was an elementary school teacher. I never loved it. And after I had breast cancer, I got very involved with the American Cancer Society because they had a program called Reach to Recovery. A year after my breast cancer diagnosis and treatment, I was taken on as a volunteer, and I really began to realize how especially male surgeons spoke to their breast cancer patients, and I didn't like it at all. And I started speaking out about it, and the Cancer Society at that time got a grant to do a cancer program called Cancer Mount, and they asked me to be the coordinator of it. And that kind of got me into the whole adult education realm. And I did end up getting a master's degree at Syracuse in adult education. And after their grant ran out, I ran a program for displaced homemakers, which I don't even know if people would know what that is, but it's women who either are widowed or divorced and need to get back into the workforce, or they've never been in the workforce, and we help them find jobs and so they could be independent, take care of their children, whatever. From there, I went to work. Somebody knew about me from the Community Foundation of Central New York, and they were doing a huge child care project for the Ford Foundation, and they asked me to coordinate that. And I did that for 5 years, and then they kept me on as the program officer. And it was a wonderful job. I was involved in the community and involved with donors, and it was just a superb job, and I loved every minute of it. At times, it was very scary because I knew of 3 women similar in age who were not doing well and did all eventually die. So that always is very frightening. On the other side, though, I had an aunt, and that's probably, if they ever did testing the BRCA gene on my father and my brother, I'm quite sure it would have showed up, because it seems to be going down that line. My aunt had it, then I had it, and I have a niece who had it on my father's side. I think every time you go for a mammogram or go to the gynecologist, or any lump that you find, you're always a little nervous, a little frightened by it. I didn't think too much of it coming back because I felt the radiation and the mastectomy was quite enough, and I was going to be okay. I think just having such young children and being so young myself, that was very frightening. In fact, the day that they found the lump, I will never forget. My daughter was 5 years old, and she was with a friend, and I had to call the mother and say, could you please keep Ellen for a few more hours, because I have to now go back. Well, as I said, the gynecologist found it. Then he wanted me to immediately go to the surgeon. So it was a very scary, like, how could this be? I'm only 35 years old. How could I possibly be having breast cancer? And I can't believe this is happening. I had little children. I had a 5-year-old, a 10-year-old, and an 11-year-old. And the 11-year-old climbed in bed with me when I got home from the hospital and said, "Are you going to die, Mom?" And I looked him straight in the eye and said, "Absolutely not, Scott." And he was more aware of what was really going on. And he read about one of the third basemen for the Brooklyn Dodgers' wife was diagnosed with breast cancer. He said, "Let's write a letter to her." I said, "What a great idea." So we wrote, and we did hear back. She did eventually die. She was very young, and I think she was pregnant at the time, which is not a good thing often. So, yeah, but that's how Scott and I connected, and he's always been the child that I think is more sensitive to all these things. Then how do you tell? My mother and my mother would be so upset about this. And I do remember they were going to a wedding, and I said, "Go to the wedding." And then she rushed up. She was still in her dress to see me in the hospital after they'd done the mastectomy. I just felt so sad for her to watch her daughter in so much pain, because she had really never gone through very much of that at all, and just made me very sad. In the 50s, Betty Friedan's book had just come out, The Feminine Mystique. There was a lot about feminism, what it is to be a woman. Yes, so that does not define you, your breast. If you want to do something for yourself, if you feel better about having an implant or whatever, fine, then do it. And it's interesting, my granddaughter is a counselor at camp, and she runs the senior unit. And she just told me this the other day. She's going to try to work with these young girls on not caring so much about what the boys think about their body, but what do they think about their body. And don't worry so much about, that you put on a little weight or whatever, that all these things, you have to like yourself. That's the most important thing. And fortunately, I had a very, very supportive husband, very supportive kids, very supportive family. And it helped a lot to feel good about myself. Three years ago, I was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And that was very scary because everybody I know had died from pancreatic cancer. I mean, everybody that had pancreatic cancer had not made it. I know they have new things out now, and I was put in touch with a doctor. And this too was just, serendipitous. I was at a physical therapist. I ran into somebody that I knew, and she said, my husband had pancreatic cancer, and he's been cured from it. He went to Johns Hopkins. Anyway, I got all the information. They were so incredibly helpful. I went to Hopkins. I did have the surgery February 6, 2019, and I had the surgery, and I was cancer-free for about a year, and then another lesion has shown up. So I'm back on chemotherapy, but things are going very well. And I have a very positive attitude about this also. I'll be 85 years old. It's a little different, but I am trying. I go for chemo, and it's not too bad. I'm living my life. I think you just have to live every day. You don't know. So I'm playing bridge, I'm playing mahjong, I'm with our friends. We go down to Florida. It was interesting. When I ran the Cancer Bound program for the Cancer Society, one of the things that we did was send people that had cancer to teach young doctors what it's like to have cancer and how stressful it is, and the right things to say and the not so right things to say. So I think that's changed a lot. I think a lot of physicians today are much more aware. Maybe they've had family members who have had cancer. They're much more aware. They don't add to your stress by, I'm sure there's still some out there who aren't so good, and also I think people are more aware, and they're more willing. I don't think we don't have a good match. I'm going to look for somebody else. I'm going to talk to people. And I think they do talk to people who have had cancer, and they network, and they find out where to go, who to see. Now, does insurance cover all this? I don't know. I don't know what that's like for everybody. I mean, I was fortunate that, we have good insurance, and it covers a lot of these things. Just make sure that you are aware of all the options that are out there for you. I know it's scary, but so many people have survived this, and they have so many new things now that will help you. And talk to people if you possibly can. I remember having a friend who would not share that she had cancer with people, and I said, it's so helpful because people who have gone through this can be so supportive and really guide you along the right path. So I think talking to people is very, very useful and very helpful, and you could come out a stronger, better person as a result of it. Oh, I think it's a fabulous idea that would help other women and men. I know there were men involved in that, and that must be really frightening. It's not something that many men talked about, and I thought it was a wonderful project and a wonderful way of letting others know what it's like to go through this, what you can look like afterward, how you can get support mechanism behind you. Just so helpful to anybody who's going through this kind of experience.